For 1 week in late August 2018, families from North and South Korea were reunited. Some for the first time since the Korean War ceasefire in 1953. There have been just 20 such rounds of visits. It's a sign of diplomatic goodwill when relations between the North and South warm. Three months earlier was the historic first meeting of a U.S. sitting president and a North Korean leader. Each man agreeing to conduct a path to peace. But diplomatic efforts with North Korea by world powers have begun and stalled for decades. Will the U.S. and the two Koreas ever get it right? This is the story of the Korean Peninsula and finding a permanent peace, told by people who tried.
People love to compare diplomacy to chess because it seems so very rational and people really taking their time. There's basically two people sitting in a room thinking their moves out. I think diplomacy is more like billiards, where there are a bunch of balls in the middle of the table and somebody comes up with a cue stick and hits a ball in order to get it into a pocket on the other side. And along the way, the ball hits others, and it's horizontal and dynamic. And so with North Korea, what are the other effects? So one is, obviously, the relationship with China, Japan, and South Korea. I mean, it could affect many kind of in concentric circles reaching out. Plus, North Korea and the United States may not be the only people with a cue stick. So I think that it has all kinds of possibilities in terms of unintended consequences, like billiards.
Why does North Korea continue to perplex and agitate the U.S. and our allies? It begins in 1948 with Kim Il-sung, a young revolutionary who will forge one of the most unique and isolated dictatorships on Earth. After World War II, two nations are arbitrarily born, divided at the 38th parallel, the Soviet-backed North and the US-backed South.
It's true that Kim Il-sung, he was a fighter. That's what he spent 10 years in Manchuria doing. And when he comes back to North Korea, he is fundamentally a revolutionary nationalist and not a communist. Ever since the army was formed in 1948, it's been the most powerful base of the Kim family's power, and it just dominates every aspect of North Korean society.
Kim will use the military to maintain a totalitarian grip on power. In June of 1950, in a bid to unify the peninsula, Kim's army invades the South. His army captures Seoul in 3 days. Fearing a communist takeover, US-led UN forces enter the Korean War. It will be a deadly affair on both sides.
There was no regard for civilian life. In North Korea, there were 8 or 9 million people at the start of the war, and they lost at least 2 million people. And about 70% of them were civilians.
After 3 years, the fighting ends. But the war shapes the North's political narrative.
It resulted in a universal hatred of the United States across North Korean society.
North Koreans believe a completely different view of what started the war and a completely different view of how it ended, in which Kim Il-sung led his troops to victory and vanquished the Americans and the South Koreans.
I always ask the North Korean officials, how is it that if the U.S. started it, that it was the North that reached Seoul within 3 days? And they they've rarely encountered a heretic like myself, and so they really, their eyes kind of go wide at some of these questions. I think often they don't realize that there are these incongruous bits of information that don't really fit into their worldview.
For North Koreans, the Korean War is all about an American power that is constantly out to seek to crush them.
North Korea, much more than South Korea, is the inheritor of Korean political culture. They always kept foreigners at arm's length. It's not isolationism so much as exclusionism.
Out of this exclusionism, Kim developed a philosophy called Juche, that North Koreans need no outside influence or reliance. To a people that over centuries were occupied and invaded by imperial forces, Juche is a bold statement that resonates and rallies North Koreans behind Kim more than ever.